got a whole bunch of people out there that ain't rooting for Shedeur Sanders. And let's call it a buck. Let's keep it a buck. There's reasons as to why that is. When he was at Colorado, completed 70% of his passes, throwing about 37 touchdowns, guiding them to a winning record, being coached by his daddy, primetime Deion Sanders. Along the way, there was a lot of resentment built. And we got to be honest about this. Primetime Deion Sanders is the greatest cornerback to have ever lived. Primetime Deion Sanders is arguably the greatest athlete who's ever lived. One can make that argument. You can think about Bo Jackson. In today's day and age, you can think about Shohei Ohtani. You can bring up the Barry Bonds as a hitter. You can bring up the LeBron Jameses of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world. You can bring up football players who are versatile enough. You can do all of that. You cannot definitively rule out that primetime Deion Sanders is arguably the greatest athlete to have ever lived. We got a lot of old school callers to SiriusXM Mad Dog Sports Radio. You know the number, 888 Mad Dog 6, that's 888-623-3646. Go ahead, give me the names. Can you say it with finite, with definitiveness? Oh, this person, that person was a better athlete than primetime Deion Sanders. Are you sure you can do that? Remember, on the football field, he was a cornerback. He was also a punt returner. He was also a kickoff returner. Sometimes he played wide receiver. And then whether it was with the Yankees or the Atlanta Braves, he went and played baseball. You know he could fly. You see the speed that he had. Primetime Deion Sanders is unquestionably one of the greatest to have ever lived, if not the greatest. And he's got a swag and a bravado and everything else that came with it. And obviously that was transferred down to his son. We saw his son with the watch. You understand what I'm saying? Kept doing this all the time. You know, showing his watch and raising his arm up and down, especially when he was trolling competitions like that former quarterback from Colorado State. And then when he went into the draft, you heard his father bloviating about how there were certain places he just wasn't going to go, and NFL teams wasn't having that. They're like, who the hell you think you are? We ain't going for that kind of nonsense. You're not empowered here. Then you had the specter of, if you brought him on, meaning you drafted Shedeur Sanders, the likelihood is that his father wasn't going to be far behind as the imminent head coach in waiting and all of this other stuff. None of that helped him for the draft. I'm making the case, ladies and gentlemen, that was Shedeur Sanders drafted as a fifth rounder because he was a fifth round talent, or was he drafted as a fifth rounder because folks wanted to send a message that they weren't that high on him or the prospects of him and his daddy making noise? Me personally, Deion Sanders is my brother. Love him to death. And his swag has been earned. That's not the case with Shedeur. That's not the case with Shiloh. That's not the case with anybody else. And you got a lot of kids out there that want to sit up there and stick out their chest because of what their parents did. No, damn it, you got to do it. And I'm not accusing Shedeur Sanders of doing that. I'm saying there were people that said that. And not only that, there were people that were saying that his attitude leading up to the NFL draft and those pre-draft interviews were not the greatest. Why? Because guess what? He was letting you know what he would and wouldn't do. And he always has questions because he's smart. And a simpler way to put it with Shedeur Sanders is that it's all about the why. With him, the knock against him, if you speak to NFL teams, is that he is not somebody that's just going to do whatever somebody just tells him to do without at least asking questions. He always wants to know why. Now, to me, it's very, very simple. You don't have to be a professional football coach to know how irritating that could be. You know what you have to be? A parent. What parent do you know wants to hear their child constantly asking why? Now, there's sometimes you're willing to explain it. There's sometimes you're willing to edify and educate and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's why. This is what the thinking behind it. This is what I want you to do. Other times it's like, damn it, because I said so. It's not a democracy. I'm your daddy. Here's what I said. Do it. I'll be the first to admit sometimes I'm like that. Samantha and Nyla will tell you in a heartbeat. Sometimes I explain to them, sometimes they don't have any damn rights. I'm daddy. I said do it, do it. Period. Parents are like that. Coaches in the NFL damn sure are like that. College coaches are like that. You think Nick Saban just explained every little thing he wanted to do? You think sometimes he didn't just say, players, do it? That exists everywhere. So the quarterback, that's all about the why, you gotta be with the right coach. And right now is the time to ask ourselves questions about Kevin Stefanski, because Shedeur Sanders is going to, Kevin Stefanski arrived in 2020. Coach of the year in 2020, 2023. Kevin Stefanski, Shedeur Sanders this Sunday is gonna be Kevin Stefanski's 13th quarterback. 13! At some point in time, ain't that about you? At least a little bit. Just a little bit. You did have Baker Mayfield there. You did have Joe Flacco there. You did have Jacoby Brissett there. You did have Jameis Winston there. You've had an abundance of quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, y'all gave him $230 million guaranteed. You had quarterbacks there. What I'm saying is 13 quarterbacks and still looking for one. 5 years later, at some point in time, when do we get to look at you and just ask the question, what level of culpability do you have? If I told y'all that a head coach that was a two-time coach of the year is in his 13th quarterback in 5 years, and most of those changes had nothing to do with injury, ain't that about the coach at some point? I would say so. So these are the kind of things that I think are important to think about as we're sitting here talking about this today. Again, the number to call up is 888-MAD-DOG-6. 888-623-3646. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Shedeur Sanders, I will say this last part. Everything's on the line. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody's asking him to look like a superstar. But he cannot go out there this weekend and look how he looked last weekend against the Ravens. 4-16, 25% completion percentage. He cannot do that. If he goes out there and looks as lost, as confused, as discombobulated, as inept as he looked this past weekend,